Hi, and welcome to the Sunstone 2020 Digital Symposium. I'm Lindsay Hanson-Park, Executive Director of Sunstone, and I'm so happy to welcome you here today to our first ever all digital conference. It's kind of strange and awkward. Maybe you're all zoomed out. If you aren't zoomed out, you will be in 3 days. It's such a weird time. I really do wish I could see you and hug you. We don't remember when we used to hug. We don't do that anymore, and talk to you and hear about how your day is and how your kids are doing. And so we miss you, and I'm sorry that we can't provide that sort of connection right now. It's sort of, we're all in our own wilderness, to use a Mormon term, and it's going to be interesting when we can all be together again and maybe not be wearing masks. So I hope you are all well. I know this is such a difficult time for people. I know that there is so much going on in the economy and with mental health and with injustice and oppression. And so it can wear heavy on our hearts. But hopefully this is an invitation this weekend to sort of escape to old traditions, to heritage, pretend you're traveling back in time, if you will. And on that note, I wanted to tell a story about my favorite Mormon historian, well, one of my favorite Mormon historians, Juanita Brooks. I've been working on a history project for Signature Books about Juanita. So Levi Peterson, if you're out there listening, if you don't know who Juanita Brooks is, she is a woman that was basically one of the most prominent Mormon historians in the 20th century for excavating Southern Utah history. She did a lot of incredible things, but one that she is known for is her book on Meadows Massacre. And she and I descend from the same Levitt family. Dudley Levitt, he was involved in the massacre, and people that Juanita knew were involved in the massacre. And so she grew up around people who had seen and witnessed and perpetrated horrific things. And she got to see in real time the weight that carried on them. She got to see how it impacted their lives, which in turn impacted her life. And perhaps that was part of what drove her to dig up these ghosts. I mean, she dug up some ghosts of Mormon history and she looked them square in the face. And there's so many metaphors from her life that we could take that I think are just incredible and phenomenal and really relate to what so many of us are going through. But I want to tell a more lighthearted story because I think it's so perfect to explain kind of this conference and what we're going through. Juanita Brooks would often talk about her childhood growing up in Bunkerville, and she talked about, she was born in the late end of the 1800s, lived right through the turn of the century. She was there. She lived through a pandemic. Juanita Brooks got through it. Joseph F. Smith didn't, but she did. And, she talks about the time when cars came to town for the first time, the invention of cars. And it's such a strange thing for me to think about now because I've never not been with cars. I'll never know what it's like to see and experience a car first time after, riding horses so much. And she got to do that, and she wrote about that. And here's what she says when she talks about this in a few places, but this is what she says in a dialogue interview. She says, "My childhood was very primitive in some ways. There were no cars until 1916 or 1917, when the first car came to Bunkerville. The school stampeded. The kids went out the windows and doors. We lined the street, and they had to let the whole school out for the afternoon." So it was just like such an exciting time. And she has this apocryphal story that she tells about her father and people in town where, when they drove a car for the first few times trying to stop the car, they forgot the brakes. They would pull on the steering wheel like the reins and say, "Whoa." And I love that story because I have that same story in my family. My grandfather, who was a sheep herder in Fountain Green, Utah, he would talk about those same things when cars came to Sanpete County. So it's just really cool to connect with her on that. And I think about that. I think about change. Mormons, we're not stranger to change, right? We have this thing called faith, which some people like to think is this like static little ball that never goes anywhere. But that's not true at all. Faith is organic. It's a living thing. It's a breathing document. It's growing and moving and shifting and sometimes blossoming and growing thorns. And sometimes it dies and makes way for something new to spring up. And we have a people who use that faith, the founders of our religion, who left their homes over and over and over again. They came as pilgrims and invaders, and sometimes both at the same time. And I think our lives are ever changing, but we like to think of our church as static, or our testimonies as static, or our anything as static. We're just so used to not wanting to change. We want to keep things the same and preserve. Maybe it's part of our preservation obsession as Mormons, but the reality is we're changing all the time. And so it's interesting because I've had to experience that change in myself. You've probably witnessed it from me as, just this young mom from Stansbury Park figuring out how to help and to put in the work here. And I have to tell you, we're in that space of change and tension. Sunstone is a place that makes space for doubt and pain and anger and beauty and art and music and things that can't be spoken. And there's so much beauty and depth and meaning in that, but it's a heavy, heavy, heavy wilderness to walk through. And I'll be honest, it hurts me sometimes because the stakes are high for me too. It means something to me. This tradition matters to me. I claim it, and I refuse to say otherwise because it's who I am. Mormonism asks so much from us, and I don't care what level of Mormonism it is. There's something very powerful and pervasive about it. I always say it's full immersion. It really is. It seeps in everywhere. And so to have doubt and change within our faith and to grow out of faith sometimes, and we say lose faith, but that's not how it works at all. It's as if we want to let that separate us. Like, we can't speak the same language, and I disagree. I think we have this common shared language of Mormonism. And so this conference is an invitation for you to remember that language, to pull it out, to speak it, to be kind with it, and to use your knowledge that you've gained from it that speaks other languages and bring to the table, bring new ideas, challenge yourself, let yourself be challenged. And I'm sorry, but as far as change goes, we're going to need that kind of patience from you. There are going to be technical difficulties. There are going to be problems. Someone might not show up. We're trying, and we see your participation as an effort of good faith because it is. We need it so much. It's such an important part of our support, and it really is going to help us keep doing this work for a long time. And that's important because I inherited it from 40 years of greatness, and now someone will inherit it from me. And we want to keep this tradition of holding more voices in our community. I think it's absolutely necessary. And Sunstone has often been sort of sidelined as the fringe, and people feel powerful when they act that way. I think that there's a culture in the LDS community that likes to position itself in proximity to power and authority. And I found that to be so interesting because Sunstone has been an opportunity for me to see where true beauty and growth is happening, and that's on the margins. And that's something that Juanita Brooks learned too, that as she wrote her book, as she changed through all these hard things and felt loyal to her people, loyal to bringing it and making it a better place. When she was called disloyal, it hurt her because she couldn't have been more loyal. You have to be loyal when you want someone to be better, and that's what she did. So she was in the margins too, and that's where she found some of the most beautiful, impactful parts of her history that have helped our community forever. So at Sunstone, what we're asking for this year, in the midst of so much change, there's so much change in your own lives, in everywhere, and in the format that we're doing it, that if you can just, project your love, send it out, project patience and generosity, give us some space to be a little messy through this process. We're trying really hard. Grace Poole, who is our events manager, has been phenomenal. And we should all send her flowers, honestly. Just everybody send her flowers. I don't know if you actually, that would probably freak her out, but just tell her thank you. And Trace Rogers, he is a volunteer that has helped us. He is committed to making a community healthier and safer, and he's very committed to Latter-day Saint. And so it's so beautiful to be able to walk with people that care. I want to thank Stephen Carter, our editor of publication, our director of publications, and our editor. Walking with him has been so lovely because he is one of the kindest, most generous people you'll ever meet. And so it's a joy to be with him, and our board and our donors and our friends and supporters. All of you are part of this work. And like I said, it's heavy, especially being in this position when you hear everyone's stories and you get to talk and interact with people. It is not a burden that can be carried alone. And so it's nice to be able to walk in these spaces with you, to share your joys, your pain, your trauma, your problems, your criticisms, your faith, your love, your devotion, what keeps you bound and keeps you to it. All of these things matter. You matter no matter where you fall on the spectrum. Ex-Mormons, we claim you. Fundamentalist Mormons, we claim you. RLDS, we claim you. Community of Christ, we claim you. LDS, we claim you. And everyone in between. Non-Mormons, we won't baptize you if you don't want to be baptized. We ask permission for those things here, so it's fine. But everyone out there, thank you. As you go through the sessions today, be generous with the speakers. They're nervous too. It's such a weird time to do this. If their kids walk in, that will be adorable and very Mormon of them. And so be patient with people, and let us know if there's anything we can do. We just want you to enjoy this and sort of take it in. And if you feel like you have something to say, or that you could share your voice coming up for the next conference, then submit something. Our call for papers is September through March. So you can submit an idea or proposal. If you see that there's not enough topics speaking to certain things, join us. We need help. We need all the help we can get. So thank you for those who have put their trust in us. I hope you have a wonderful time at the Sunstone 2020 Symposium. And if you have it in your hearts, we would love a donation. So feel free to donate at sunstone.org. That will help us keep going too during uncertain times. And again, enjoy this amazing, crazy, changing conference.